of an update of what's going on kind of behind the scenes, especially with missions. And so I just kind of wanted to stay on track, so I actually wrote something down, and I'm going to do my best to stay on that, okay? There's many ministries going on. There's other things happening in our community and through our church. This just happens to be missions related, and so that's why you're here about that. And so we thought it would be important to update and inform you guys, the church body of Watonga Naz. So first, I'd like to start by saying that I'm personally grateful, honored, and excited to be a part of what God is doing. And first, I'll share a conversation that my wife and I had in a hotel room while we were in the Philippines. I was thinking to myself, here I am, a recovering addict, thief, liar, convicted felon, etc., sitting in a hotel room all the way around the world in the middle of a work and witness trip that God placed me in the thick of planning and organizing. I realized that for any of that to happen, there were relationships, trust, and a vision that had to be built. And for any of that to occur, a power greater than ourselves had to be at work. Now, from what I understand, and you should know if you don't, that Watonga Naz has been on mission long before Jimmy arrived here. God has already been working in the hearts of this congregation. As a matter of fact, it started even long before some of you were here. This congregation helped plant a Native American church right here in Watonga in 1957. Was part of planning a church and parsonage in Africa in 1962. And helped to rebuild one in Guatemala in the late 1960s, and more recently, one in Texas after they suffered destructive weather. Now, as a matter of fact, now this is exciting, at least for me. We as a denomination have been on mission from the very start. While we were founded here in the United States, over 75% of the Church of the Nazarene at Large membership exists outside the United States. I think it might be safe to say that the Church of the Nazarene's mission statement to make Christ-like disciples in all nations is certainly a proper one. Okay, back to the conversation my wife and I were having. We were taking inventory of our lives, and I asked her if she remembers what our conversations were like back when we were first dating and what God was speaking to us then. She said that she remembers us both speaking of being called to missions and that we both wanted to always be used by God to impact the kingdom of heaven. The reason I asked this question is that I was wrestling with an internal notion that I had possibly abandoned that call. And that's when God showed me something amazing. He pointed out the fact that we are currently on mission right here in Watonga, in Okeen, and in the Philippines. And by we, I mean all of us, the whole of this congregation. You see, God was at work through you in planning a church in Okeen. Then he called a couple of missionaries to join you in that mission. So Cassie and I serve as pastor to a group of disciples in Okeen, who I'll just like to note that our air conditioner has been out for probably 3 to 4 weeks, and our congregation still meets. We make it in the park, we'll ask other churches, and our attendance is just as good as it was prior, and I am personally encouraged by that. And so we're pouring out our lives into the circle of our influence, while being part of starting and strengthening outreach ministries to the marginalized. Ministries like the Ministerial Alliance, ministries like Celebrate Recovery, while at the same time God is calling you to join us in missions to the Philippines. Right before our work and witness trip to the Watonga Naz, this particular denomination supplied a tent to Iligan Church of the Nazarene, as well as donated to the West Mindanao district in order to have beds and to room dorms for their pastoral training. Also, since our return, which is just in the last few weeks, from our work and witness trip, this church has supplied 2 more tents. One to, how do you pronounce it, hon? Kalaanan Church of the Nazarene and Salai Church of the Nazarene. Now hear me clearly. These tents are not for camping. These particular groups of believers will hold their Sunday morning worship services and probably 90% of their other ministries under the shadow of these tents. We are currently, to this day, rallying, supporting, spiritually and financially, and equipping volunteers in Hingoog City to provide an ongoing feeding ministry and Bible studies that will minister to over 200 kids and their families immediately, with the hope that a healthy and thriving church would be developed, that in turn will impact the community for the kingdom. God is also opening doors to us for evangelism and ministry to be done inside of jails and prisons across the Philippines and possibly the United States. So, during those initial conversations that Cassie and I had, we weren't sure what missions would look like for us. I'm realizing that it's always evolving. When we step back and look at it, I'm a guy from Ohio serving in Oklahoma and the Philippines. Cassie's a gal from the Philippines who serves there and all the way to the United States. You all, a congregation in Watonga, Oklahoma, are serving locally and across state lines as well as across the globe. So, the notion that I somehow abandoned the call to missions was dismissed, along with my personal perception of what that looks like. So now we ask ourselves, has the Lord in fact made us your missionaries? We can't help but be elated as we participate in what the Holy Spirit is weaving together for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. So I did have like 4 pictures. I just got these yesterday or the day before. Pastor sent them to me. So this is in Salai, Church of the Nazarene, an official church plant, a standalone church, if you want to switch it over. So look, this is just a picture to you guys. I only met 2 of these people. But this is just a picture, but these are living, breathing beings just like you, that because of what God is doing through us, they will have an actual place to go on Sunday morning and worship. That they don't have to just meet in a home, but that these people, particularly that you're looking at, literally them, not a theory, not a random picture, these exact people plus more will benefit because of the fact that we are allowing ourselves to be used by God to bless others with something as simple as a tent. Something as simple as a tent that they can have worship. Okay, I think that, was there any other? Okay, yeah, this was I can only show this here, but this was just kind of in the jail. Joan got that look like, oh, I sure hope they can't get out of there. You know? Yeah. And I don't know if there was any other ones. I think it was the prayer. Yeah, so this is actually, they was able to send this to me. So
say it's not staged, right?
It's definitely not staged. So it's phenomenal because, you know, I usually don't like sharing this stuff, but I'm going to. So you got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. However many hands you see, those are people at that moment receiving Christ. I came to a moment where I asked, you know, if there's anybody in here who would like to receive Christ, and so I said, I know you can't come to the altar, obviously. I said, but just stick your hand out and let's pray for you. And so I'm just grateful that because of our partnerships together and allowing God to use us, prisoners can be set free. Maybe not literally, but in their souls, right? They might have senses to see. So thank you for allowing us to be a part of what you're doing and vice versa. I love you guys. Oh, one more thing. If you have questions, there's board meetings every month. Talk to your board members. Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Okay.
And I don't know if you noticed this, but if you heard, we purchased, since them being home, 2 more tents. We voted last week. I don't know if you caught that. We purchased as a church through your giving. We voted to purchase 2 more tents for 2 more churches. We find that very vitally important to continue the ministry there in the Philippines, and I'm excited that I get to be a part of a global church in Watonga, Oklahoma. Just real quick, I want to let you guys know of an exciting thing. I know trust me, you'll get out of here in time, okay? But I want to show you some exciting things that we are developing for you and your child. This is a Hazley House sermon notes. Hazley, this is your name on there. Okay, this is for you specifically, okay? So we're developing that. You can't have it just yet, okay? But each and every Sunday, you will have 52 weeks of sermon notes. And so we expect you to be at every one of those sermons, all right, and writing notes, okay? But really, obviously, Hazley will be in kindergarten in August, is that right? So Hazley is going to have a little bit of a trouble writing down her sermon notes, but she can verbally speak what she got out of the sermon or what she got out of children's church to her parents. So she'll come to someone like Amanda or Nick and say, hey, this is the song that I really liked, or this is the person that I remember speaking up there, and they'll be able to write that down, and they'll have a little activity on the back. How can I apply the sermon to my life right now? And so we're expecting our parents as well to come alongside of our children on Sunday mornings. And so this is the child version. There will also be a teen version. So this is already developed for our children, not printed yet, not put in backing yet, but there will also be a teen version as well. And so we're excited to share this with you. And we will leave them here at the church. And so every Sunday that you'll come and you'll get your sermon book and have sermon notes. I think it's a really neat idea that we're going to do. So anyway, start off, you ready for the sermon? We're going to go fast, okay? So buckle up. Here we go. How do you measure your spiritual faith? How do you measure your spiritual growth? Asked that question last week. How do you know that you're growing to become more Christ-like? Is that your goal? Is it your goal to become more Christ-like, or is it just something that's like, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of God in me, and my objective is not necessarily to become more like Christ. Whatever God has for me, maybe He'll give it through me through osmosis, but maybe there's somebody here that would say that they're not necessarily on a journey, they're just complacent. My hope here in the Church of the Nazarene in Watonga that we are on a journey and we are all going in the same direction, and that we're going to pursue Christ-likeness and what that might look like. And so this is what the series is all about. It's about this pursuit, this passionate pursuit of pursuing God and God through us. So let me paint you this hypothetical. You're driving a car, okay? You're going at this constant speed, okay? On your left side is a valley. On your right side is a fire engine traveling the same speed as you. And in front of you is a galloping pig. Yes, a galloping pig, which is the same size as your car. And you cannot overtake it. You can't go past it. It's right there in front of you. You got an engine, you got a valley on one side. Behind you is a helicopter. Okay, and it's flying at ground level. You got both a giant pig and a helicopter, and you're all traveling at the same speed. What must you do to safely get you and your child that is right beside you out of this situation? What must you do? May I propose that you get off the carousel? Okay. Landed. Great. Moving on. So, it's those that kind of have gathered in Jerusalem on Pentecost Sunday or Pentecost Day, and they have this expectation of what's happening. And so I painted this picture, and you're thinking, okay, a big giant pig, a helicopter, a fire engine, and you're thinking they're all this chaos. Some of you were probably driving down the road, you were in the car, and you saw the pig in front of you, you heard the helicopter, and you had some type of expectation. You might have had no expectations at all. But this is kind of the way that it was on Pentecost Sunday, that there was an expectation, and it wasn't very exciting. The expectation wasn't very exciting. It just was a normal, run-of-the-mill, I'm going to church, I'm going to make the check that I went and did my pilgrimage, I showed up to church, nothing exciting was going to happen. But whenever you showed up, all of a sudden there was earthquakes, there was wind, there were fire, there was all sorts of crazy languages spoken at the same time. It wasn't a normal Sunday. It wasn't a normal worship service. All of a sudden, it became pretty exciting. Let me tell you what, most Sundays, I pray this way. I pray for people that have a great expectation, a high anticipation and expectation for what's going to happen. Because what you bring to the table, just in your expectation that God is going to speak and do something great on a Sunday morning. But I also pray that because of you, that there's other people that show up on a Sunday morning or some other service in which that we provide, even if it would be at Harvest Church or even our prayers in the Philippines, that your expectation to God to do something so dramatic in somebody's life that somebody shows up and say, it's just another Sunday. That God meets them right between the eyes and does something so radical in their life. So let me propose to you just another scenario, okay? Are you ready? You're a superhero. No, you do not have any special superpowers like in other. You're not faster than a speeding bullet. You're not more powerful than a locomotive. You cannot leap tall buildings with a single bound. You have no cape or spandex that outlay a uniform, mind you. Nick, I see your spandex every once in a while out there mowing the lawn. You don't have a backing of an alter ego billionaire. No, your superpower is like no other superpower that DC or Marvel can write in a comic book. Your superpower is the ability to love unconditionally. That's your superpower as a superhero. You have the capability of loving unconditionally. You can't do anything else, but that's your superpower. I sat in my office yesterday, and knowing that this was going to be the sermon that I was going to preach, Olivia happened to walk into my office, and I said, "Okay, Olivia, guess what? You're going to be my test subject. I'm going to use you here." I said, "Okay, you're a superhero. What would you like to be your superpower?" And she says, "A super whip." I said, "Oh, okay. What does that do?" She said, "Oh, it can whip things, and it can shoot lasers." And I was like, "Okay, that's pretty cool. A whip that shoots lasers." I said, "Where'd you hear that?" She says, "Wonder Woman." I was like, "Oh, I didn't know Wonder Woman had a super whip." I said, "Okay, let me ask you something. What if you had a superhero ability just to simply love? What would that look like to you?" And she says, "If I was able to love," she says, "I guess I could shoot hearts at people." She says, I said, "Well, like Cupid?" I said, loving unconditionally is not like a love like, ooh, I love romantically. It's like loving your brother. It's like loving your mom. It's like loving everybody, even the person that is your enemy, to love them. And she says, "Well, I guess I could write them nice thank you notes." And so here's the deal. It's not very entertaining even to say my superpower is to love unconditionally. It's not really enticing. No wonder that DC or Marvel hasn't wrote anything about that. Now, here's the thing. There are particular villains, there are particular superheroes in which that they do have the capabilities of loving, but it's from the Greek word eros. It stems from a word that maybe you and I may have heard before. It's erotic, eros, but it's more of a physical type of expression of love. Kind of a romance, but not really romance, if you know what I'm talking about. I don't think I need to go any further than that. But we're talking about superheroes, superpowers that can actually be ours, and we're talking about love, which is kind of like the umbrella of all the things in which that the fruits of the Spirit list. And some of you can list the superpowers here. It's love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. All these are superpowers in which that can be ours. Who do you find that's easy to love? Anybody think of anybody? Who do you have in your life that's easy to love? Some of you are holding those people in your arms this morning. Some of you are sitting next to those people that are very, very easy to love. Now, here's the deal. We're going to find out. We see some moms like looking at their kids. The next question is, who is it that is hard to love in your life? Some of them are still on your lap today. Some of those are still sitting next to you in church. Those are the people that are difficult to love. We're not going to hurt anybody's feelings by calling anybody out here, but it doesn't take any superpowers to love those that are easy to love. I think it becomes very supernatural, that not in the natural, to love people that are not easy to love. Anybody think that pranks are a love language? I used to think that until that I had a prank that went really, really wrong, and I about lost a friend. See, my neighbor growing up is also still my childhood best friend. His name is Levi Bratton. He's also a pastor at Cedar Springs. And we grew up kind of next, our backyards connected with one another. He had an older sister. His older sister was named Mandy, and he had a tent in his backyard, and we were going to camp out together one evening. And one of the things that before it got too late, we thought we were going to pull a prank on his older sister. It's always great to pull pranks on your sisters, isn't it? Yeah, so it could be a love language. Ray, if Shonda does that to you, it's just love language, okay? But I remember that his mom made a very beautiful cherry pie. And I love cherry pie. And what we decided to do, and it's very innocent, what we decided to do is we would take Mandy's piece of pie and we would take out the cherries individually out of the pie. And you know the kind of the goo that's still in there? You can take the whole cherries. You know what we replaced those whole cherries with? Cherry tomatoes. So we had a cherry tomato pie ready for us. And all of us were sitting down. We had a scoop of ice cream. And all of us had a plate with cherry pie and a scoop of ice cream on it. And we gave Mandy hers, and she got down, she took a bite of the ice cream, and all of us are just looking at, seeing what's going to happen. And we're trying not to snicker. And then she takes a cut of her cherry pie, and she puts it in her mouth, and it was a blood-curdling scream. Can you imagine what that would taste like? You know, she did not find it very funny. I think it was funny. It was an innocent thing. I mean, still to this day, there's some bad blood with that. We thought that it was a very innocent thing, and she did not talk to me, or she was very mad at it seemed like for weeks about that. Now, I'm convinced that we need God's help, who is the ultimate source of love. And whenever we look at the passage of Scripture in Galatians chapter 5, whenever we read this, we can kind of see those that are on the contrary. Live by the Spirit, I say, and do not gratify the desires of the flesh. For what the flesh desires is opposed to the Spirit. Did you hear that? For what the flesh desires is opposed to the Spirit. I love these word pictures. We're teaching about this in Wednesday morning Bible study, that the flesh, although the flesh, you know, I want you to go ahead and pinch yourself, make sure that you're alive this morning. Go ahead and pinch yourself and say, this is what he's talking about. It's a word picture, flesh. Now, without my flesh, I would not be alive, okay? So Paul is using a word picture here, and he's using this as an opposition to the Spirit. He's not saying that you take off this type of clothing or the thing that it wraps your body. He's saying the flesh is a word picture that is opposed to the Spirit, and what the Spirit desires is opposed to the flesh. For these are opposed to each other to prevent you from doing what you want. He's ultimately saying, my selfish desire, my inclination to do what I want, even though that there's a greater good out there, I am going to do the default of getting mine first. It's like whenever you go down the line and you're just saying, you know, I hope that there's food left, so I'm going to cut in front of everybody. I'm going to get my food first. You know, it's my desires above other people's desires. But if you're led by the Spirit, you're not subject to the law. And then he goes on to say in verse 19, it says, now the works of the flesh are obvious: fornication, impurity, licentiousness, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, anger, quarrels, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, carousing, and things like these. I'm warning you, as I warned you before, those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. Goodness gracious. Okay? So heed to this. Verse 22. It says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such these things, there's no law. If you operate in these things, there's no law-abiding person that can live above the law. Here it is. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature with his passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Okay? So, that's not necessarily our text today, but the passage of Scripture that I really want to focus on is one that you probably heard over and over again, maybe in a wedding ceremony, or a description that you could use against your child. Say, if you really love me, this is how it would look like. So 1 Corinthians chapter 13, it says, if I speak in tongues of mortals and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. I love that picture. If I have prophetic powers and understand all the mysteries and all the knowledge, and if I have all faith as to remove mountains and do not love, I am nothing. Let's keep on going. If I give all my possessions and if I have over my body so that I might boast, but do not have love, I have gained nothing. And then it goes in this description, love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoice in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes in all things, endures all things. And then it kind of closes it out, says love never ends. Now, I love this picture of how this verse starts. If I have not love, I'm a clanging cymbal. And so I found a video that depicts this perfectly. This is a great depiction if you are somebody that has all these things and have not love. Here it is. This is you. This is what comes to my mind. What it is. So, if it's me, I'm thinking of Toy Story 3. Anybody else come to think of that? Toy Story 3? We have some Toy Story 3s here. How many here taken back to their childhood of having one of those things? Did you have one of those, Cade, growing up? So whenever, I guess there's another thing than which that it does, that if you bop it on the head, it like makes his lips go back and goes, like that, right? I don't know if you guys knew that or not. Did you guys know that? You never had one, okay. I think it was Satan's toy right there, back there. You know, you don't get one for your kids because that's all you hear: king, 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 king. So this is what it's all about. If you have the appearance as if that you do good things, yet it's not out of the posture of love. That's what it looks like to me. That's the image that comes to my mind. I don't know about anybody else. Maybe I've got this warped image of what it is. Okay. But here's the truth. So this word that Paul is writing, and I think about these superpowers, and especially the one called love. He uses this Greek word. It's a better word than which that our English language has. It's this word called agape. Say agape. Easton, say agape. Agape. Yeah, so it's a Greek word in which that our English language, we have love. And so whenever we say love, it kind of gets stolen. That word gets stolen from our languages. Because then we get to a point where we say there's this fast love, that I've fallen in love. And really that's this eros type of love. It's like this word that is quick. They said this quick falling in love type of thing. And it's not agape. Agape, and its word has to do with this unconditional or divine love. Now it's hard, unconditional. I got in trouble as a youth pastor because I would sit in front of my teenagers and I would say, listen, unconditional love is rare. Here's the thing, it's possible that your parents are not capable of loving you unconditionally. And I was like, I'm looking back on that, I'm thinking, my goodness gracious, that was probably the worst thing and it's incorrect. Okay, so I had to go and apologize for that. But here's the thing. We have this word unconditional love. It's kind of difficult because we think that there's conditions to everything. It's hard to find unconditional love. I believe that we're capable of this unconditional love. I believe that we can operate in agape love. But it's hard to find. It's definitely hard to find. Because I think that whenever we say unconditional love, it comes with feelings. Because sometimes we get hurt in the midst of unconditional love. It gets thrown back at us. Here's the deal. If we have the superpower of agape love, if we are capable of loving unconditionally, that it's not about a feeling and it's about a choice, here's the thing. The situational things that you're in whenever you're expressing love or giving love or expressing love to somebody that does not love you back, do you know it's not hurtful? Because you've made your mind up. You've made the choice up to say, I'm going to love even when it's about my enemies. I think that's a great superpower to have. That even though that love is rejected, that under agape love, the supernatural love in which that God gives you only through faith in Jesus Christ, the supernatural thing, I believe that we can overcome even evil with it. So, my question is that whenever we say it's easy to love certain people and it's hard to love other people, my question, I think that we all have to explore just real quick, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to love? What would be the motivation to loving an enemy? Because first of all, we would say, they don't deserve our love anyway. And so here's a reminder, Romans 5:8. This is a reminder, this is us. But God demonstrates His own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, while we were still enemies of God, Christ died for us. He demonstrates His own agape love for us in this. Is that whenever we were still enemies, whenever we would still consider to be somebody that would spit or say crucify Him, He would still die for us. And that's a great picture of agape love, that while we're still sinners, and I think we need to be reminded this morning, that we need to be reminded in communion, we need to be reminded with His Word, and that just bathes over us and showers us, is that although that some of us might identify as Christian today, we also have to be reminded that we were all once sinners or sinner right now. And then although that we have a love of God that showers us and loves on us even when we don't deserve it, that it should motivate us, okay? It should motivate us to the next level. There's a song that's very, very popular right now, and we've sung it before here. We didn't sing it this morning, but you'll hear it during communion. It's written by Corey Asbury, and this guy by the name of Corey Asbury wrote an article about the song Reckless Love. Anybody hear the song Reckless Love? Anybody ever listen to it on Christian radio? Some of you might find it familiar whenever we look at it later. But one of the things that he's talking about is that he had this son by the name of Gabriel. And he had this hard idea about this unconditional love of God because he had this imperfect picture of a father that would reject him. Corey Asbury would say this. He says, I have this hard idea about how that a father would love me unconditionally no matter what I do because my earthly father would reject me. He says, it wasn't until that my son Gabriel was born that I looked at this son, this baby. Listen, this baby that could do nothing, that was dependent upon me. Life was dependent upon me. Only thing that he did was poop and pee in his diapers. That's the only thing that this baby was capable of doing. He looked at Gabriel and he says, there's nothing that this child could do for me to ever not love him any less. And it was at that point in time that Corey Asbury began to hear these words of the song of reckless love, that there's nothing that God wouldn't do. There's no space, there's no action, nothing that would ever separate him from the love of God. See, Ephesians 6:4, where Paul's writing another letter, he said, let me just kind of say this to fathers. We have some fathers here today where Scripture would say to your children to bring them up. And fathers, don't aspirate your children. Instead, bring them up in training and instruction of the Lord. In other words, help them see how a loving God is. That's your call as fathers. There's not very many calls in which that he gives specifically to fathers, but this is the call to fathers. This is your call. If you've got children, you've got a calling on your life. Show them how to love. And don't let it be any different than the love of a father. That's our calling. You know, I know it can be hard. And I know it's challenging. But I think that here is a great picture. The Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5. I'm going to close with this. It says this. It says, you have heard it, that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. What? That you be sons of your Father in heaven. He causes the sun to rise on evil and good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love, what reward would you get? I love that. If you love those who love you, what reward would you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your brothers, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? And then he ups the ante. Be perfect, therefore, as your Father in heaven is perfect. I love what the Message says. This is how the Message puts it. I believe that it's verse 47. It says, if all you do is love the lovable, do you expect a bonus? If that's all that you do is love the lovable, do you expect a bonus? Anybody can do that. If you simply say hello to those who greet you, do you expect a medal? Any run-of-the-mill sinner does that. In a word, what I'm saying is, how many times did you want to say this? Have the boldness to say this. In a word, what I'm saying is, grow up. You're kingdom subjects. Now live like it. Live out your God-created identity. Live generously and graciously towards other, the way that God lives towards you. I can't preach any better than what's been written there. So it wasn't me, it's God's Word. Can you believe what Kason preached today? He told us to grow up. I didn't write that. I didn't tell you to grow up. That's God's Word right there. So real quick, let me kind of just give you 3 takeaways before that we take communion, okay? 3 takeaways, okay? Here's the deal. If you're looking today and if you were to say, I want you to read 1 Corinthians chapter 13 this week. I just want to challenge you in some practices, okay? 1 Corinthians 13, anytime that it says something about love or it, I want you to put your name there, okay? So basically, this is what it's saying. The first part of 8, substitute your name wherever love or it is mentioned. And it would sound like this. Kason is patient. Kason is kind. Kason does not envy. Kason does not boast. Now, this is not a motivational. You don't have to look in the mirror and be all like, come on, motivate yourself, Kason. Kason's patient. Kason does not boast. Kason is not proud. Kason does not dishonor others. Kason is not self-seeking. And as you say this, whether you're looking at the mirror or whether you're looking at Scripture and you're saying, Kason, do this. Cassandra, do this. Eason, do this. Jimmy, do this. Is this. If there's something that does not match with your characteristic, can I just submit this? There's an acrostic, so I'm gonna use an acrostic. It's very, very cheesy, okay? But I think it works, okay? It's cast, okay, with 2 T's, all right? And I use the A for and, okay? So this is, obviously, I'm unashamed, but I'm ashamed of this, okay? Here we go. Confess. If anything doesn't line up, just confess it. Say, Kason is not. And I don't want you just to stay there and say, Kason is kind, is not kind. And just confess it. But just because that you confess it, don't just let you sit there and just say, Kason's not. But would you submit that because this is God's will? Would you be able to submit it and say, I confess it, but I want to submit, I want to trust you, God, that you're going to transform me. I'm going to trust you because I'm going to submit it to you. Kason is not patient at this moment. It's not a reflection of kindness right now. It's not a reflection of love. So God, I know this is not what you want of me, so I'm going to submit it to you and I'm going to trust that you're going to transform me. Okay? So there you might be able to confess, submit, and then trust for transformation. Cast it upon God. Some of you will have the opportunity to receive. Everybody has the opportunity. I don't know why I said that. Maybe because I want to just make it clear that everybody today will have the opportunity to receive the graces of God today in communion form. It's a representation of Christ's body and his blood. And we had to rewind just a little bit, going back to that Ephesians passage that says that God demonstrates his love this way. That although that some of you might feel unworthy, that might feel like that you don't line up to this, here's the thing. He still died for you even whenever you were a sinner. That he is able to offer these graces to you even in your sin. So although that you might not feel worthy, here's the thing. We practice open communion. You don't have to be a member. We even say you don't have to be baptized to take communion. Only thing that I would say that you would be hesitant is if you were here today and you took these elements and you would say, I don't need God for nothing. If you're here today and you're able to express that you need God, you're welcome at this table. You're welcome to take this. And so if we have some ushers, we're going to close today. Corey Asbury's song is going to play and remind us of this reckless love of God as we take these elements together.